Welcome back to another episode of Out Loud Geek, where we discuss news and views about pop culture, science fiction, fantasy, food, cooking, the outdoors, and more. If you've been wondering why so many movies today in Hollywood appear to be completely disconnected from the creators of the original works that they're based on, there's a simple reason for that. Apparently, producers in Hollywood today think that the people who are the most familiar and knowledgeable about these works are the least qualified to write the films that are going to be based on them. Does that make any sense? No, it doesn't. But this is what Hollywood is doing, and one producer has come forward and freely admitted it. In this article from Bounding Into Comics a few days ago, Marvel Studios producer considers it a quote-unquote red flag if prospective writers are fans of the original comics, and prefers to hire someone who, quote, is out of the culture, unquote. In other words, this producer doesn't want anyone to work on a Marvel film who actually knows the material. I would really like somebody to explain to me why that makes sense, because I, like most people, are not going to see any sense in that whatsoever. And there's actually a description for this phenomenon that we're going to get into. As if it wasn't obvious enough from simply watching any of the studio's post-Infinity Wars output, producer Nate Moore has revealed that he believes the key to Marvel Studios' success is hiring writers who are quote-unquote out of the comic book culture over anyone who loves the source material. Moore, whose career has seen him serve as a producer for such Marvel Cinematic Universe entries as Captain America Civil War, The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and most recently Black Panther Wakanda Forever, shared his insight into Marvel Studios' hiring philosophy during an appearance on the November 16th episode of The Ringer's The Town podcast. Speaking with host Matthew Baloney about his general experience working for the Disney subsidiary, Moore was eventually asked if there was, quote, some kind of a Marvel boot camp or something that you do with these filmmakers to ingratiate them into this world and knowing all the things that they need to know, unquote, to which the producer confirmed, not really. In other words, they don't want people who know the material. Gee, let's say you're sick. Do you want to see a very qualified doctor who could treat you or possibly perform surgery on you if necessary? Or do you go to an auto mechanic to have him check you out? What makes more sense to you? This makes no sense whatsoever. If you have a legal matter that you need addressed, do you go to an attorney who is highly qualified and very familiar with the type of legal matter that you need dealt with? Or do you go to your local supermarket and talk to the store manager to see if he can help you? This is basically what this producer is essentially saying. Whoever is the least qualified writer is the one that he wants to hire. And I think that Amazon has apparently followed suit with this type of philosophy because it's quite clear that their dim-witted showrunners, J.D. Payne and Patrick McKay, were highly unqualified to work on their $1 billion Lord of the Rings of Power series. Who would hand the control and writing of a $1 billion series to two individuals who have no demonstrated experience in being able to do anything like that? Well, apparently Amazon had no problem doing it, and look at what it's got them. A completely stupid series that very few people are watching, and is not getting more people to subscribe to the Amazon Prime service. But this is the mentality in Hollywood today. It is so completely against just basic common sense. Noting that some Marvel writers grew up reading and collecting comics, such as Avengers Endgame co-director Joe Russo and Black Panther director Ryan Coogler, Moore told Baloney, quote, one thing I think is interesting, and specifically for writers I should say, is that a lot of times we're pitched writers who love Marvel. And so to me, that's always a red flag, unquote. So does he think that Ryan Coogler is unqualified to have directed Black Panther Wakanda Forever and the original Black Panther? Does he think that Joe Russo was unqualified because he knew the material? This is essentially what this producer is saying. This makes absolutely no sense. And guess what? There is a psychological term for it. I'm not kidding. It's called the Dunning-Kruger Effect. If you have never heard about this, and I was not familiar about this before I started doing some research, the Dunning-Kruger effect in psychology is a cognitive bias whereby people with limited knowledge or competence in a given intellectual or social domain greatly overestimate their own knowledge or competence in that domain relative to objective criteria or to the performance of their peers or of people in general. According to the researchers for whom it is named, psychologists David Dunning and Justin Kruger, the effect is explained by the fact that metacognitive ability to recognize deficiencies in one's own knowledge or competence requires that one possess at least a minimum level of the same kind of knowledge or competence, which those who exhibit the effect have not attained. Because they are unaware of their deficiencies, such people generally assume that they are not deficient, in keeping with the tendency of most people to, quote, choose what they think is the most reasonable and optimal option, unquote. Although not scientifically explored until the late 20th century, the phenomenon is familiar from ordinary life, and it has long been attested in common sayings, such as, a little knowledge is a dangerous thing. I'm sure you've heard of that. And in observations by writers and wits through the ages, such as Charles Darwin, who said, ignorance more frequently begets confidence than does knowledge. A prime example of this is when people with no medical background or qualifications begin to recommend treatments for diseases that are either untested or simply are not treatments in the first place. People want to believe simple things, and in those cases, it doesn't always work. If you are sick, you need to go see a doctor. If your car is broken down, you need to go see a qualified auto mechanic. And in the case of writing something for a big property like Star Wars or Marvel or Star Trek or Doctor Who or some other large and complex intellectual property that has a massive fan base, then you have to hire writers who are familiar with that intellectual property. Let's consider writer, director, and producer Dave Filoni for a moment. He has created some of the best Star Wars animated series to exist. And the reason why his series are so well beloved and acclaimed is due to his intense familiarity with the universe that George Lucas created. But in today's Hollywood, especially this particular producer that this article is about, he would not even be considered for a Star Wars film or animated series. This is one of the reasons why Hollywood today is so effed up. It's really kind of shocking when you see something like this, but at least this guy openly admitted it. And it's very unlikely that he's alone in this attitude. This is probably a very pervasive attitude in Hollywood because there are other examples just as I cited. So yeah, this is the norm in Hollywood today, and this is why so much of what is coming out of Hollywood is so upsetting to longtime fans of numerous franchises because they don't want to follow existing canon. They want to flush it all out so that they can create some new thing that nobody wants. Welcome to today's Hollywood, where the least qualified people are the ones that you turn to create and write your movies and series.
Thanks for watching today, and a huge thanks to everyone who has subscribed to our channel. We appreciate your support. If you enjoyed this video, please press the like button, and please feel free to share a comment. If you'd like to see more of our videos in the future and help support this channel, please press the red subscribe button, and please press the bell to receive notifications for new content. You can also find us on Facebook and Twitter by clicking on the links in the description. Until next time, this is Out Loud Geek.